Rebel Moon confirms something that I've been saying on this channel for many years. It's an uncomfortable truth, especially in today's society, but it is a truth nonetheless. Female main characters are never going to work in Western entertainment. They are never going to be a thing. They are never going to be as profitable or as interesting as their male counterparts. There is nothing that Hollywood or Netflix or anyone can do to make female main characters work in the West. And I add the West as a caveat because this is what the West gives us in terms of female main characters: unattractive, short haircut, masculine personality, just a cheap replacement of men. However, this is not true everywhere. In Japan, there are characters like Princess Mononoke. Now, she is one of the main characters in the movie Princess Mononoke. It's named after her. Ashitaka is the other main character. One of the, I would say, one of the inspirations for Breath of the Wild. I mean, it's incredible, this story. One of my favorite movies of all time. But it is, it's undeniable that this sort of content works. It's a woman, she's savage, she's incredibly skillful, she's dangerous to be sure, but she's still feminine, and her strength and her will are not at odds with that. She's not overly masculine. They have her with short hair, but her short hair isn't some kind of like statement. It's not like half her head shaved or some kind of man haircut. No. No. The truth is that this type of content is so phenomenal that it blows away anything that the West does. I'll give you another example. Another of my favorite movies coming out of Japan, Spirited Away. Again, this isn't even a warrior. This isn't some masculine male. You just want a masculine man with six packs. No. No, the story centers around a little girl and her quest to free her parents from the spell that turned them into pigs. It's very fascinating. I mean, it's a remarkable movie. Studio Ghibli has given us some truly incredible gems. Now, if what I was saying in my message was women can't be main characters ever, women, because they're women, can't be main characters, then this movie shouldn't work. And Princess Mononoke shouldn't work. And there are many others. Ghost in the Shell is another example. In Japan, the reason why it works is because there is a diversity of women with different personalities, different heights, different hair colors, different eye colors, different looks, different perspectives. But the thing they have in common is that they're all women. And they're allowed to be women. They're allowed to be feminine or they're masculine. But they're allowed to be everything in between. In our society, we can only portray women as Captain Marvel or this facsimile of being a man. You're only allowed to be a cheap, broken down, get it off of wish type of man. That's what this is. This is masculinity purchased off wish, and it never works. Nobody wants LGBTQ content in their media. Most of the world doesn't want it. Most of America doesn't want it. Nobody wants a female lead character as told by a Western studio. Most of the world doesn't want it. Most of America doesn't want it. You go down the list of things these people in Hollywood and at Netflix hold dear, and most of the world are repulsed by it, don't want it. don't find it interesting, don't find it relatable. And guess what? A lot of the American population are the same way, which is why it doesn't catch on the way that all franchises did. Lord of the Rings, one of the best selling book series of all time. Lord of the Rings, one of the biggest movies of all time. Many consider Lord of the Rings to be the perfect story ever told on film. Just the way that one movie flows into another, they consider it to be the perfect trilogy. I would argue that Star Wars is still up there. You know, the original trilogy, even the prequels are pretty good. I mean, at this point, maybe it's just that I've been exposed to I've looked into hell, and so suddenly suddenly some things don't seem so bad. But here's what it is. The West cannot make female main characters work. They have spent millions and billions of dollars to try to make this happen. And the only thing they have to show for it is a seemingly endless wake in the rearview mirror of our lives, where we can see the debris from all of our most beloved franchises. When I was growing up, I loved all of these different franchises. I loved Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was one of my favorites. Ninja Turtles. Seen what they've done to that recently. April O'Neil is now a fat black lesbian. All of the changes that they've made have made these things worse in a number of ways, because a bunch of low IQ, in the case of Seth Rogen, dope smoking, just pathetic left-to-weight extremists. Seth Rogen, again, a perfect example. A guy who tried to get into an argument with Casey Neistat over, hey, it's not the worst thing in the world when your car gets broken into and stuff gets stolen from you. Like that still remains one of the most cringe and embarrassing things I've ever seen, when Seth Rogen tried to shame Casey Neistat because he was upset that his car got broken into. And Seth Rogen tried to turn it into some kind of like, oh, how dare you be racist? It's like, fucking really. But the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, that there's something precious about these Japanese stories. Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Japan can make it work. Their culture, their way of storytelling, there's just something about it. And you look at their media, and they have more success rate of making female main characters that people can, at least on some level, empathize with or relate to. Inuyasha was another example. I just thought of it. Inuyasha. I don't know if any of you remember, but in the decades before now, Inuyasha was extremely popular in the West. And I think that my point for bringing this up is the fact that it's not about the gender. It's not about, oh, women can't be this. No, what it is the culture in the West. The culture around wokeness and female promiscuity and not holding women accountable for their mistakes, and thus not being allowed to show women being flawed or being deeply, deeply troubling. They don't think it's troubling. We see it as troubling. We see their portrayal of women like Captain Marvel as deeply problematic, but they don't. They see it as a virtue. When they showed that scene of Captain Marvel, breaking that man's hand because he smiled at her and said, hey, you should show me a smile. Her breaking his hand and stealing his stuff, and that to them was a virtue. They're like, oh my God, we got him. Because they're pathetic. and they're deeply insecure, and they're part of this tribe where their brain is basically scrambled eggs from the old drug commercials. This is your brain on wokeness. It looks like a rancid scrambled egg. And unfortunately, the result of that is that you're not going to get a good piece of material. Meanwhile, in Japan, they say, well, little girls or adult women, it doesn't matter. They're allowed to be anything in between. This movie, this story, was just, it was incredible. I mean, I don't think that there are many people. Oh God, what happened? Oh, of course. You shouldn't click anything, otherwise it'll show you another ad. All right. Anyway, the character is very funny, and their personality is very interesting. And I think that oftentimes in the West, we lose sight of the creative spirit in order to try to chase clicks on TikTok and Twitter. Now this scene from Princess Mononoke is just incredible, where her parents start getting turned into pigs, based on the food. I mean, just incredible. And her mission, her goal is to basically change them back. And so, I mean, just looking at this, I want to watch this movie because of how good it is. And I think that a lot of people feel the same way. It's why it stands up to the test of time. It's why this movie is still considered to be a classic, because of the visual uniqueness of it, while being stunning in terms of animation. I wish that Disney would go back to doing animated movies. Maybe they would find their soul again. But my point here is that all of this stuff exists in Japanese entertainment. They know how to create female characters. And there's also the other side of it. They also have the, big-titted, anime girls, the meme, the stereotype, anime girls with big boobs and, all of that other cliche stuff. They have that as well as this. This high-quality, deeply interesting, I would say fairly complex in terms of philosophy, show, movie, manga, whatever you want to call it. They have this, and they have the other stuff. There is so much diversity in their ideas and in their content and in the way their characters are portrayed. The animation styles are different. In Japan, there is actual diversity of thought, which is the only diversity that matters. In America, there is uniformity. You must conform. Your animation must look very similar to the animation of this other show. Your project, your main characters, which have to be a woman, have to be, one black character, one Muslim, one Latina or Latinx. They have to all be the same. They have to be very, very, very close in terms of uniformity. But in terms of the female action stars, more often than not, it's a combination of things. And America has decided, or rather wokeness in America has decided, women have to be portrayed as ugly. Women cannot be portrayed as attractive. And this is something that goes back to, I would say, years ago, many years ago. Mass Effect Andromeda had a bit of a controversy where the female main character in Mass Effect Andromeda, they intentionally made her ugly. They intentionally made her look terrible. Because, well, I don't know. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know. Why would they do that? Why would they possibly change the female main character to be uglier? To be less appealing? Well, the answer to that is because they're not allowed to do anything different. They're not allowed to change or deviate from the doctrine. And the doctrine says women have to be portrayed as not attractive, ugly. Because if you don't, then men are going to look at them. Men are going to look at them, and that's the male gaze, and that's bad. That's sexualizing women. But in order to make my point, let me use this. Let me pull this up real quick, and I think you'll start to see what I'm talking about. So you may say, well, what does the person on the left have to do with the character on the right? Well, this, I believe, is the actress who was, they get her computer generated model. This is her. They intentionally made the character less attractive on purpose. They uglied her up. Like, the woman who plays the lead in Mass Effect Andromeda is like stunningly beautiful. Like, shockingly, stunningly beautiful. And yet they intentionally made her less appealing because they thought that is ultimately what people want. That's what people really want, right? They want an ugly version of the character. But this, I'm actually going to show this picture as well, because it's a juxtaposition. In the West, you have this guy who basically is almost a one for one. But her, and apparently her name is Jade Rossi, she who's like stunningly beautiful, like really, really attractive. This is what they turned her into. This is what I'm talking about here. This type of thing exists all the time because these companies have hired women who are unattractive, who are low IQ, who are left-wing extremists, who are part of this rabid ideological cult, and they think that they have some kind of duty or obligation for the betterment of women to do this. Because they have told themselves it's more inclusive. It's more inclusive to basically make women look uglier and more manly. Because they're demented, they're pathetic, they're deranged. And ultimately, this is why shows like Rebel Moon, and we don't even have to talk much about Rebel Moon. That's not the point of this video. It's the foundation, but Rebel Moon confirms this by showing us the same problems, the same issues that we've seen from Mass Effect Andromeda, where you take a character and you put it through the lens of this woke ideology to the point where it is uglier on the other side. Now, the show does have redeeming qualities, of course. It has interesting villains, villains that you want to root against. That's great. But overall, there was nothing about the main character, who of course was a woman, that was in any way compelling or engaging or interesting. She was one of the least compelling parts of the show, and it wouldn't have been the case if she were a man, because in the West, men are still allowed to be portrayed in a bunch of different ways. You can portray men in a whole host of different avenues. You don't have to conform to one way of viewing men because there isn't a stigma around giving men flaws and making them deeply troubled. But women, you're not allowed to because what are you, a misogynist? What are you, one of these Trump supporters, these alt right, people? The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, that what we should demand from these entertainment companies is not to just copy Japan and make woke entertainment in the Japanese style. What we should demand is that these companies drop wokeness entirely, completely, purge it from their system. And anyone who believes in wokeness and identity politics, fire them. Fire them in a very public fashion. And go back to making work like this, where you have stories like Ashitaka and Princess Mononoke. Characters, settings, and worlds that are deeply complex and interesting and dynamic. They want to bring you back for more, that have deeper themes, that portray women as feminine but also can be savage and strong and fighters. But there's no one who would look at this and say, well, she's probably a man. No, she's very clearly a woman, but she's a warrior, riding on the back of a wolf, giant wolf. I mean, it's awesome. The whole story is awesome. And by the way, in Princess Mononoke, there are other women characters that I didn't mention. I probably should have brought up. I probably should have brought up the quote unquote villain of Princess Mononoke, which is the woman with the guns, making the guns. This entire movie is just so incredible to me. I love the theme. I love the atmosphere. I love the look. I love the callback to to mythology. There are parallels that are applicable even today. Like when you talk about Irontown, like this whole story with this whole story with Irontown. If I can get past a commercial, this whole part of Irontown, I thought this was really interesting because you've got nature and then you've got the this whole forge that's basically representing the industrial element, and then you've got women working the forges. I thought that was really interesting. And she's the main villain, quote unquote, in this movie because she represents humanity's. I mean, we could go on and on about Princess Mononoke even after all this time. God damn, it's such an incredible movie. And all of these Japanese works, they're so complex. I could go on and on about Spirited Away and all the different representations in there. It just makes me sad in a way. Because what we get today are these basic just pieces of disposable media with these characters that we don't relate to and we don't like. There's nothing. There is absolutely nothing about this that is compelling, that makes me want to watch more, because I know what's coming along with this. The ridiculous haircut, the I'm a girl boss. No, there's nothing about this that I want to see more of. There's not a single thing, and ultimately at the end of the day, this is going to be what destroys Western entertainment. There's a reason why Netflix is looking to adapt anime into live action. It's because the West doesn't have enough stuff to create that people want to actually see to bring in subscribers. That's the sad reality. Rebel Moon is not going to make the difference. People are going to say, well, okay, I kind of like this, and then they're going to forget about it. It's not going to catch on. It's not going to be a thing. People are going to watch it and then they're going to forget it. Meanwhile, Japan is coming out with anime after anime. They're coming out with manga after manga. The people not only watch now, but they watch for years. They become fans of it. It's like, I'll give you an example. Moist Critical, he just recently started seriously watching One Piece. One Piece has been around for, goddamn, it's been around for a long, long, long time. That means in his life, there were several stages where probably people were getting him to watch it and he avoided it, and he avoided it, and he avoided it. But the series has been around for so goddamn long that eventually somebody wore him down, he starts watching it, didn't like it at first, and then starts to like it. That is the power of these stories, that they are so compelling that nearly at every point in Moist Critical's life there has been somebody telling him to watch One Piece, and at certain points he says no, but then he jumps right along in the stream. That is the power of these IPs and these franchises. For me, growing up, it was Dragon Ball Z. All my friends loved Dragon Ball Z. I got into watching Dragon Ball Z. I goddamn love Dragon Ball Z. At first, I thought it was kind of silly. I'm like, what is this, a cartoon? Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's like cartoons are for kids. Like, what are we doing? One of my friends sat me down and said, okay, well, we've got some Dragon Ball Z. Will you watch it? I'm like, sure. I ended up goddamn loving it. It's one of my favorite series of all time. It's like, holy shit. The Saiyan Saga was the best. But we don't have anything like that. We don't have anything so good that it is able to take different cultures and different people and bring them together. What we have is actually dividing. It is divisive. This content with these ugly women, with these ridiculous haircuts, acting masculine, acting as men, being replacements for men, promoting all of the message and wokeness and identity politics, it actually breaks people apart and sends them flying into different directions. Kind of like Kuma in One Piece, sending all of the Straw Hat Pirates to different parts of the world. That's what this media does. It is divisive. It tears people apart because most people don't want this, but there are a few people that think themselves morally and intellectually superior that watch this stuff and say, oh yes, this is how women should be portrayed. Oh, I just farted and it smells so delightful. The essence of soy milk and those oats that I left overnight in the fridge with goat's milk. Yeah, those people, they love this stuff because it makes them feel like they're morally and spiritually and intellectually superior. They're not. They're definitely not spiritual. They're definitely not moral. They're definitely not intelligent. But it makes them feel better. But the reality is, women in action movies and all these different roles will never replace men. You'll never replace Iron Man with Riri Williams. You'll never replace Thor with Captain Marvel. You'll never replace any of these characters. You'll never replace Luke Skywalker with Rey. You'll never replace Captain Picard for Michelle Burnham in Discovery. Whatever that character's name is. You will never create a story where the main character is a woman from a Western studio and have it be a success. And I have but every piece of entertainment that's come out over the last 10 years as an example. Wish. How many people have said, yeah, I watched Wish, but the main character I was rooting against? Now, the people at Disney said, oh, well, no matter what we have this black woman say as the main character, people are going to root for her because she's a black woman. I guarantee you. That's how the conversation went. They believed that they were going to be able to convince you to root for this character because of the racial makeup of the character. Whereas me, because of what I've seen in the West, what I've seen in the decline of politics, my inclination is to say, okay, this is a black woman with half her head shaved, espousing views that most of the world and most of America don't agree with. No, I'm rooting for the king. I want to see the king win because even though he's, you could argue he's not necessarily maybe the best guy, his reasoning and his morals and everything else are far more solid and logical and ethical than her. But these people in Hollywood don't understand that. They can't compute that. They don't comprehend it. It's foreign to them. What do you mean? What do you mean accountability? What do you mean? These foreign concepts, I don't understand. What do you mean she's the bad guy? Because she's espousing this entitled, ridiculous, pathetic mentality. You should just give everyone what they want whenever they want it. No. This type of stuff fails because it is meant to send a message. And the people working behind the scenes, they are pathetic. A lot of them are perverts. They're degenerates. But mostly, they're just weak, spineless people. They don't have the balls to say the word no. Hey, we're not going to have a science fiction or science fantasy show with a female main character or an emasculated main character. No, what we're going to do, because it's been successful in the past, we're going to have an Aragorn. Now, imagine what Lord of the Rings would be if they changed Aragorn to be a woman. Or changed Aragorn to be kind of a, short, Tom Holland, like a short, more beta male-ish type of guy. Like, wasn't imposing, didn't have that, chiseled masculine features. I think it would hurt the quality of the production. That's just what I personally believe. Because I don't think that you can replace masculine men with feminized men or masculine women. That's my thought on culture. That's my thought on how Rebel Moon is going to be perceived. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comment section below what you think. I appreciate you watching. This is a bit of a longer video. See you next time.